Welcome to this masterclass explainer for AQA Topic 3.1.3. Today, we're rigorously tackling a massive issue in business, that fundamental tension between maximizing profit and engaging in ethical marketing. If you're studying A-Level Business, this is an absolute cornerstone topic. We are looking at the very real clash between doing what makes the most money and doing what's actually right. Here's a quick roadmap for our session. We'll be moving systematically from foundational AO1 knowledge straight through the marketing mix and capping it all off with your AO4 evaluative judgments. Kicking things off with Section 1, the Marketing Ethics Dilemma. So, what does this actually mean in practice? The crucial point to remember is that marketing decisions literally never happen in a vacuum. They constantly force the choice between immediate financial gains and broader societal responsibilities. When we talk about an ethical dilemma, we're talking about a business having to look at its SMART objectives, specifically its financial targets like profit, profitability, and cash flow, and weighing them against its corporate social responsibility, or CSR. A business has to ask itself, do we prioritize immediate shareholder dividends, or do we take a stakeholder approach that considers our impact on the community, our employees, and the environment? It really boils down to a strategic divide. The traditional shareholder approach focuses entirely on maximizing returns, driving down unit costs, and boosting immediate revenue. But the modern shift towards the triple bottom line framework argues that long-term sustainable success requires balancing people, planet, and profit. It demands that a business thoroughly evaluate its environmental, social, and governance criteria, what we commonly refer to as ESG.
Moving right along to Section 2, Ethical Product Design Strategies.
When it comes to the product component of the marketing mix, businesses face a pretty stark trade-off. Do you pursue maximum cost efficiency through rapid, cheap production, or do you invest heavily in product safety, durability, and sustainable sourcing? The fast fashion industry is the perfect example of this dilemma. Their traditional model relies on low unit costs and encourages consumers to replace rather than repair their clothes. But that comes at a steep ethical cost. We're talking massive global carbon emissions and serious controversies over supplier working conditions. Ethical product design, on the other hand, demands a completely different mindset, tackling waste, ensuring high product safety, and enforcing a strict supplier code of conduct. To put this into perspective, let's look at how even fast fashion giants are trying to pivot. Take Shine, for example. Faced with criticisms that the fashion industry produces roughly 8% of global carbon emissions, they've actually committed to reducing their absolute greenhouse gas emissions by 25% by 2030. That's a big deal, especially against an industry trend that's predicted to rise by 45%. To support this, they're introducing strict warehouse quality checks, testing for things like tear strength and color fading. The idea is that fewer faulty items get distributed, which reduces return costs and cuts down on waste. It's a fascinating example of attempting to blend operational efficiency with environmental sustainability. All right, time to lock in those AO3 analytical skills. Please pause the explainer now and complete Task 1. Remember, your analysis needs logical, relevant steps connecting sustainable design via customer perception and brand loyalty right through to competitive advantage. Let's dive into Section 3, Promotional Ethics and Greenwashing. You absolutely must have these definitions nailed down. Being able to distinguish between genuine corporate social responsibility and deceptive PR tactics is vital for exam success. So, greenwashing is when a business conveys a false impression or just overstates how environmentally friendly their products are purely for marketing purposes. Bluewashing is similar, but it involves exaggerating a company's commitment to general social responsibility and ethics just to improve its public image. Both of these are incredibly risky strategies. Today's consumers heavily value transparency. If a brand is caught faking it, the damage to their reputation and consumer trust can be absolutely devastating. Let's look at another major promotional dilemma. Brands like Gymshark brilliantly use high-reach social media influencers to target specific demographics. From a financial standpoint, influencers offer an incredible return on investment. They boost engagement and conversion rates at a relatively low cost compared to traditional media. But the ethical and financial risks are massive. If a business aligns with an influencer who behaves inappropriately or targets vulnerable audiences unethically, it can instantly tank the brand's image. The business has to constantly weigh the potential for increased profits against these immense reputational risks. Let's apply this to a regulatory context, like consumer food labeling for a firm like Finley's Farm Ltd. Please pause the explainer now and complete Task 2. Think carefully about how consumer laws and regulations dictate what can and cannot be said on packaging. Moving to Section 4, the morality of pricing. The big question here is, when does a clever pricing strategy cross the line into market exploitation? On one end of the spectrum, we have price skimming, setting a very high initial price for a new or innovative product to maximize early profits before competitors can catch up. But is this ethical if the product is an essential good? On the other hand, we have predatory or extreme discount pricing. This is where a business intentionally sets prices so low that it literally drives smaller competitors out of the market, potentially creating a monopoly. Both of these strategies force us to really question consumer values and the overall fairness of market competition policies. Let's look at the AO3 impact of this using Apple's Vision Pro. Setting an exceptionally high price relies entirely on the assumption that demand is price inelastic, usually because of strong brand loyalty and perceived technological superiority. By setting that high price, Apple earns more revenue per unit. However, if consumers decide those technological advantages aren't actually that important, or if there are design issues, they'll just shift to cheaper alternatives like Meta's product. Suddenly, demand becomes price elastic, and the high price backfires, reducing total revenue. The ethical dimension you have to consider here is whether the product's actual value genuinely justifies the massive premium demanded from the consumer. Finally, Section 5, Stakeholder Impact and Evaluation. Let's see how all of this comes together. You see, ethical marketing is definitely not just some PR exercise. It fundamentally impacts the entire business. Think about your internal stakeholders. When a company adopts a true quality approach in ethical operations, employees actually take ownership of their roles. Tying this to Herzberg's two-factor theory, this satisfies desires for responsibility, achievement, and recognition, acting as powerful motivators that boost productivity and drives down unit costs. Externally, transparent marketing builds immense brand loyalty, making your customers way less price-sensitive. Ultimately, an ethical corporate culture becomes a unique selling point that is incredibly difficult for rivals to imitate, forging a rock-solid long-term competitive advantage. Time to synthesize all of this into a definitive judgment for your exams. Please pause the explainer now and complete Task 3. Remember, a top-level AO4 evaluation requires you to weigh up the arguments effectively and explicitly answer the specific question set, keeping the context of highly competitive mass markets firmly in mind. As we wrap up this masterclass explainer for AQA topic 3.13.3, I want to leave you with a final provocative thought. When you're writing those 15 or 25 mark essays, this is the ultimate question you must grapple with. Does a highly competitive market inevitably force businesses to compromise their ethical standards to survive? Or is ethics actually the ultimate competitive advantage? Thank you for joining me for this focused breakdown, and best of luck applying these concepts to your future case studies.